Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me for another Tech Talk. And tonight we're joined by Qippay CEO and co-founder Ashley Lake Jones. John, sorry. Thank you so much for joining me tonight, Ashley.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Well, Qippay is a Kiwi-owned open banking company with a mission to revolutionise the way businesses and their customers transact, enabling their customers to pay instantly with no costly transaction fees through open banking. And open banking, which is also known as open finance, enables individuals and businesses to gain access with consent to any financial data created about them by their service providers, including bank statements, credit card statements, and more. So this sounds very interesting. I know it is something that is used overseas. And thank you so much, Ashley, for being here to explain this to us tonight.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I'm actually quite excited to talk about it.
So can you please start off with some background on yourself and how you got
Yep.
into the open banking sector?
So I've been involved in the technology and finance industry for roughly around about 10 years now. So my co-founder and I stumbled across open banking about 3 years ago. So we are working with a number of merchants and charities, and we identified some key problems in their payment experience, largely transaction fees and time delays and user experience. So we sort of looked around and what's available in the market and how we can help these merchants and charities. And that's when we stumbled across open banking. And then we became a member of the API Centre, which is part of Payments New Zealand. And that's where we sort of began our open banking journey.
So what actually is open banking?
Yeah, it's a difficult question to answer, but I'll summarize it as best I can shortly. So essentially what it means is a bank that traditionally holds consumer or business data passes it on safely and securely to a third party. That third party can then translate into something meaningful like a product or service. So in short, it creates more financial services in the market that are accessible to more consumers and merchants.
And so that's with the consent of the person whose data
That's
it is?
right. That's a very important point. So the consumer has to consent to share their data with a third party before anything is available.
So how is that different from traditional banking?
It's not, I wouldn't say it's different from traditional banking per se. I would say it's more of an extension of open banking or enhances traditional banking services. So, of course, you've got merchant services within banks, but open banking or payment services, open banking payment services rather, can add a layer on top of that where they can pay by card or they can pay by account-to-account transactions, which can save them a lot on transaction fees.
So Qippay's open banking payment solution, can you speak to some of the features and consumer benefits, please?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, around the merchant and charity clients we deal with, for them, we save them often thousands, and for the larger organizations, millions of dollars on transaction fees. This is by reducing all the traditional sort of third parties involved in a payment, and enabling a direct account transfer between a consumer and merchant. So for the merchant, they get paid instantly and paid with a significant reduction in their transaction fees. For the consumer, it means a better user experience, so they can just consent from their mobile banking app. It also means they can pay more securely. So data was coming out of the UK recently saying that through the use of open banking payments, we're seeing a reduction of fraud up to 70%. And the other thing as well is obviously affordability. So a lot of merchants you're seeing, particularly now, are passing on the transaction fee onto the consumer. So we eliminate that, obviously.
So that takes a lot of cost out, actually, if it starts to add up during the day. So what are some of the digital innovations that are driving Qippay's open banking payment solution for your customers?
Yeah, so APIs are the biggest driver. So API is essentially the glue between the third party and the bank, and it allows the data to be transmitted safely and securely. And Payments New Zealand and the API Centre have been at the front of that, trying to get banks to come on board and third parties to come on board. And they've recently had a lot of success with the implementation dates. BNZ was the first to market with the API. So that's who we partnered with first initially and got a bilateral agreement with.
And just for our listeners, the API means
Application Programming Interface.
Thank you. Thank
I'm
you.
not too sure how helpful that was.
Well, it is actually helpful because people
Yeah.
will ask me afterwards, and then I have to go and tell them. So it's better if you do it.
Yeah.
So Qippay and likely all open banking businesses must have a high level of security infrastructure in place when you think about the sharing of customers' financial data and facilitation of transactions. So how do you manage that?
Yeah, and that's a very, very important question. And I think every consumer and merchant should ask that. Well, for us, when we partner with a bank, we have to go through a thorough due diligence process. And they have to make sure that our security protocols are all up to date, our security processes, and our infrastructure is up to date. So that's where a large chunk of our costs go. We've also, from a Qippay perspective, embedded it into our ethos. So the third person we actually brought on board had a background in security and manages all our security quite thoroughly. So we do internal penetration testing, which is essentially checking for vulnerabilities on a regular basis. So security is always front of mind with payments and should always be front of mind with payments.
Yeah, well, that's right. So what are some of the key benefits to open banking for consumers, businesses, and the economy really as a whole, other than cost?
Yeah, that's a very big question, and the way we look at it, and the way a lot of people in the open banking industry see it, is it creates financial inclusion. And what I mean by that is the tools, by allowing a consumer to share their data with other third parties with their consent, it creates more financial services like budgeting apps, payment services, obviously like Qippay, reconciliation tools like Xero. And it can democratize financial services that have traditionally been held by a select few and provide it to everyone, and ideally elevate them socially. So we're seeing the impact of that. And what's great is the fact that the APIs that are getting built here in New Zealand are fit for all. So that's quite exciting. So obviously that effect of creating wealth for all will have a huge impact on the economy. For businesses, obviously I mentioned cost, but this is something that I suppose is quite important to us because we've dealt with a lot of small businesses and a lot of charities, and even the larger organizations have suffered and have having to lay off people. With higher inflation, being able to reduce transaction fees and giving businesses the ability to increase their margins is, actually quite important. And the same thing goes with charities as well. So from a business's perspective, we've actually had a lot of businesses come to us essentially crying out, how can they get help? And this is why we've sort of really pushed for the solution to get to market as soon as possible.
So, with the traditional finance methods and banking methods, is this technology a competition to that, or is it something that works with it, or how does it actually operate between the two?
Yeah, a lot of people ask that question, and a lot of people have differing views. We at Qippay see it as enhances it, and we're seeing more and more, particularly in New Zealand, collaboration around the space. So the traditional incumbents, including banks, have not looking more to partnering and collaborating to make better their service, or to collaborate with other parties to make it make more products and more services available to their consumers and to their clients. And other sort of payment facilities are now bolting on account-to-account transactions. So it's quite interesting because it's not perceived as a threat. It's now more perceived as an opportunity.
We've just had a question from Duncan, who's been listening,
Yep.
and he's asked how difficult was it to get BNZ to sign up for the contract. Obviously, we realise it's commercial sensitivity.
Yeah, absolutely. To be honest, BNZ have been great to work with. I know they're being very proactive around partnering with fintechs and working with fintechs. And it's, for us, we had a pretty pleasant journey working with them, and we're still working with them to date to see how we can help their clients. Yeah, so I can't really say anything bad about them, not because I don't want to, but because they've been great to us.
No, that's great. That's good to hear. So is open banking something you are seeing being heavily adopted here in New Zealand?
Yes. Considering how early on we are in comparison to the UK, Europe, and Australia, and some parts of Asia, whenever an open banking product has been launched, like online FPOS recently, we've seen rapid adoption. And the same thing with Xero, obviously, with the reconciliation. What it can do is so it's just common logic that someone would adopt and use these products, like budgeting apps, for example, and using artificial intelligence to improve someone's ability to manage their finances or reduce transaction fees and speed up payments. So the adoption is always high when you see an open banking product launched to market.
And actually, where can people go who might be interested in utilising Qippay's open banking payment solution? Where should they come to?
So our website, firstly, we've got an inquiry form and we respond to any inquiry very, very quickly. Also, if they want to connect and talk to me personally, just reach out to me on LinkedIn or my co-founder, Wayne Diaz. We're always up for a chat. As you can imagine, I like to talk about open banking a lot. So feel free.
Right. Well, thank you very much for joining me tonight, Ashley, and thanks for listening, everyone, because it's a very interesting fintech business, but also it is something that I've seen this sort of work going on elsewhere as well. So I know it is a worldwide trend, and it's great to see it in New Zealand, and great to see you doing so well, Ashley, you and your co-founder.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate you inviting me on this show.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks, Ashley, and we'll catch up.
Have a great evening.